Your routine is training your brain badly. Not your workload, not your schedule, not the number of tasks on your list, your routine. Think about how a typical day starts. You wake up, and before you're fully conscious, you already feel behind. Not because anything has gone wrong, just a vague, familiar heaviness sitting somewhere behind your eyes. You reach for coffee. It helps a little, but the edge doesn't fully lift. You check your phone, a few notifications, nothing urgent. But your mind is already moving, already processing, already reacting, already spending. It's not even 9 in the morning, and somewhere underneath it all, there's this quiet sense that today is going to feel like running through water. You've had that feeling before. Most people have it most days. And the explanation they reach for is usually the same. Too much to do. Not enough time. Not enough discipline. But what if that explanation is wrong? What if it's not your workload that's draining you, but the invisible structure of the day itself? Here's what I want to suggest. There's a version of your daily routine that looks completely normal. Looks even productive. Looks like the kind of life a responsible, ambitious person is supposed to live. And it's slowly draining your cognitive energy from the inside. Not dramatically, not all at once, just steadily, quietly, every single day. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly where that drain is coming from. The micro habits and invisible patterns that deplete your mental energy before the day has even properly started. Why your brain exhausts itself not from effort, but from fragmentation. And how to adjust without overhauling your entire life. Small changes, specific changes, grounded in how the brain actually works. Let's go through it. The first place energy disappears is the one most people are most proud of. Multitasking. Most people think of multitasking as a skill, a sign of efficiency. The ability to juggle several things at once and keep moving. But multitasking, as neuroscience understands it, doesn't actually exist. What you call multitasking is task switching. Your brain isn't doing two things simultaneously. It's alternating between them, rapidly, repeatedly, at a cost each time. Every switch has a price. When your brain moves from one task to another, it doesn't just redirect its attention cleanly. It has to disengage from the previous context, reorient itself, reload the relevant information, and rebuild focus from scratch. That process takes energy, actual metabolic energy, and it happens every single time you switch. Email open on one screen, Slack notifications coming in, a spreadsheet waiting in another tab, someone asking a question across the room, your phone buzzing. Each interruption triggers a context switch. Each switch costs something. By the time you get to the end of the day, you've made hundreds of these switches. You've been busy the entire time. You have almost nothing to show for it, and you're exhausted in a way that feels disproportionate to what you actually accomplished. That's not inefficiency, that's the neurological cost of fragmentation. The fix isn't complicated, but it requires intention. Single task blocks, 20 minutes minimum. One thing, no switching, no checking, no background stimulation. Not because it's some productivity hack, because your brain needs uninterrupted time to actually engage deeply with anything. Energy isn't lost in effort, it's lost in fragmentation. The second drain is less visible, and it starts before you've done a single meaningful thing. Decisions. Every decision you make, no matter how small, draws from the same cognitive resource pool. What to wear, what to eat, which app to open first, whether to reply now or later, what podcast to put on, which route to take. Each one is tiny, each one feels inconsequential, but they are not free. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that handles planning, judgment, and deliberate thinking, has a finite capacity each day. Researchers call this decision fatigue. The more choices you make, the more that capacity depletes. And here's the part that matters. The depletion doesn't announce itself. You don't feel the saldo dropping. You don't get a notification that says cognitive resources at 40%. You just start finding it harder to concentrate, harder to make good choices on things that actually matter, harder to do the work you came here to do. By midday, you've already spent a significant portion of your best mental resources on decisions that didn't matter. The adjustment is simple in principle. Remove decisions wherever you don't need them. Standardize your morning. Reduce the number of choices before noon. Automate the small stuff so the real stuff has resources left. Your brain doesn't crash, it depletes, and depletion is invisible until it's too late. Here's the uncomfortable part of this conversation. Some of the things draining you most are things you believe are helping you. 3 examples. The first is over-planning. There's a version of planning that creates clarity, and there's a version that creates pressure. When every 15 minutes of your day is accounted for, when your calendar is color-coded and your task list has subtasks and your goals have weekly reviews, it stops feeling like structure and starts feeling like surveillance. The plan becomes a source of constant low-grade anxiety. You're always slightly behind it, always measuring yourself against it, always aware of the gap between where you are and where the plan says you should be. Structure without space becomes strain. The second is resting with screens. You finish a hard meeting, you sit back, you open Instagram or YouTube or TikTok or whatever your platform of choice is, and you call that a break. But your brain doesn't experience it as rest. Your brain experiences it as a shift in stimulation type, not a reduction in stimulation. The visual cortex keeps processing, the attention system keeps tracking, the dopamine system keeps responding. You feel like you've rested. You haven't. You've just moved from one kind of input to another. Stimulation is not recovery. The third is using too many systems. Notion, Things, Todoist, a physical journal, a weekly review, a monthly theme, a productivity podcast to optimize the whole thing. At some point, managing the system becomes its own job. The organization itself becomes a source of cognitive load. More tools do not produce more clarity. They produce more things to maintain. The rule here is simple. Remove before you add. Every system you remove that isn't working is energy returned to you. Now let's talk about something more physical. What you eat in the morning, and when, directly affects how your brain performs for the next several hours. When you eat something high in refined sugar, your blood glucose spikes rapidly. Your energy goes up, and then, 30 to 60 minutes later, it drops. Sometimes sharply. That crash isn't just physical fatigue, it's cognitive impairment, difficulty concentrating, irritability, a kind of mental fog that settles in without obvious cause. Excess caffeine follows a similar pattern, a significant spike in alertness followed by a drop that often lands below where you started. If that drop happens during a critical part of your workday, your performance suffers regardless of how motivated you are. Skipping breakfast entirely creates a different problem: insufficient fuel for sustained cognitive work, especially in the morning hours when your brain is at its sharpest. None of this requires a dramatic dietary overhaul. It requires stability, a breakfast that produces a stable, gradual energy curve rather than a spike and crash, enough protein and fat to sustain focus. Caffeine timed thoughtfully, not reactively. Energy stability beats energy spikes every time. The next drain happens after the day ends, or tries to end. Constant background noise keeps your nervous system in a low-level state of activation. Television on in the background, a podcast running while you cook, music during the commute. Silence has become uncomfortable for many people, and so they fill it automatically without even deciding to. But your nervous system needs genuine quiet to transition out of alertness. When it never gets that transition, you arrive at bedtime still partially activated. You lie down and your mind keeps moving. You fall asleep eventually, but the sleep is lighter, more fragmented, less restorative. And then you wake up tired, and the cycle begins again. The screen before bed adds a second layer to this. Blue light exposure in the evening suppresses melatonin production and delays the onset of deep sleep. Even if you fall asleep at a normal time, the quality of that sleep is reduced. The practical change is straightforward. 30 minutes before bed. No screens, reduced noise, dim light. Not forever, just a window. Your nervous system needs to land somewhere before you can genuinely rest. If you never give it that landing, it never fully lands. Your nervous system never fully lands. Now look at your physical environment. The space around you is not neutral. Every unfinished item in your visual field, the stack of papers you haven't dealt with, the open drawer, the project you started and set aside, sends a quiet signal to your brain. Unresolved, unfinished, still here. Your brain maintains an active tracking system for incomplete tasks. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. Your mind continues to devote background cognitive resources to things that are pending, not a lot, just enough to create a constant low-level mental hum. Multiply that across a cluttered desk, a disorganized room, an inbox with 400 unread emails, and the hum becomes noise. And that noise costs energy, even when you're not consciously aware of it. You don't have to organize your entire space. Start with just the surface where you work. Clear it. Keep only what you're actively using. Everything else, somewhere else. Clarity outside supports clarity inside. The next drain is physical in a different way. If you spend most of your day sitting, which most people in office or remote work environments do, your body gradually reduces circulation to conserve resources. Less blood moving, less oxygen reaching the brain, less metabolic clarity. This doesn't produce acute fatigue, it produces a gradual dulling, a slight but consistent reduction in cognitive sharpness that you adapt to so slowly you stop noticing it. Brief movement interrupts this. Not a workout, not a gym session, just movement. A short walk, standing for a few minutes of anything that isn't sitting still. Research consistently shows that even 5 to 10 minutes of light movement produces measurable improvements in mood, focus, and cognitive performance. The mechanism is simple. Blood moves, oxygen increases, alertness returns. Every 60 to 90 minutes move, even briefly. Motion is metabolic clarity. The last drain is the quietest, and possibly the most expensive. The tasks you're avoiding. Not ignoring, avoiding. There's a difference. Ignored tasks are forgotten. Avoided tasks are remembered constantly. When you have something you know you need to do but keep not doing, your brain doesn't file it away. It keeps it active. It runs a low-level background process that keeps returning to the task, generating low-grade anxiety, consuming cognitive bandwidth without producing anything. Every day you delay a difficult email, a hard conversation, a project you've been circling, you don't escape the mental cost of it. You just pay it in small, continuous installments, and those installments add up. Delay is not neutral. It accumulates. The adjustment is to do the hard thing first, not as a discipline exercise, as an energy strategy. When the difficult task is done, when the loop is closed, the mental resources it was consuming become available for everything else. The background noise drops. Concentration improves. The rest of the day feels lighter. Do the hard thing first, not because it's heroic, because it frees you. Now step back and look at the full picture. You wake up already carrying mild fatigue. Your morning is filled with micro-decisions before you've made a meaningful one. You sit down to work with notifications arriving constantly, switching context dozens of times an hour. You take breaks that aren't really breaks. You eat in ways that spike and crash your energy. You move through an environment full of visual reminders of unfinished things. You sit still for hours, and you're quietly carrying a list of tasks you've been avoiding for days. No single one of these things is catastrophic. But together, running simultaneously every day, they create a drain that is steady, cumulative, and largely invisible. You feel the result. You feel it as fatigue, difficulty concentrating, low motivation, the sense that your best thinking is always just slightly out of reach. And the explanation you reach for is usually, I need more discipline, more motivation, a better system. But the actual answer is different. You don't need to add anything. You need to stop leaking. Imagine a battery. Not a battery that's running out because you've used too much power. A battery with a slow, invisible drain. A background process running constantly that you didn't install and can't see. The battery looks fine. It says 80%, but it's dropping faster than it should. And by afternoon, it's at 30. And you don't know why. That's your cognitive energy. The drain isn't the hard work. The drain is everything running underneath the hard work. The fragmentation, the micro-decisions, the background stimulation, the avoided tasks, the environments that never let the system rest. The goal isn't to charge the battery faster. It's to close the processes that are draining it. You are not unproductive. You are not undisciplined. You are not someone who needs a more aggressive approach to your own life. You are someone whose cognitive energy is being spent in places you never consciously chose. And that can change, not by overhauling everything at once, but by making one small adjustment and then another. By protecting your energy deliberately, by designing your day around how your brain actually works, not how you think it should work. Energy isn't built first, it's protected. If this helped you see your routine differently, not as a failure of discipline, but as a system with invisible leaks, then this channel is worth staying with. There's more here, each video at the same pace, the same intention, no urgency, no pressure. Take one change from what you heard today. Just one. Start there, and watch what becomes possible when the drain slows down.